What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video, and I'm super excited to have both Alex and Anthony back on the channel from Fireside Giants. Link's going to be in the description below. We'll be back over there next week, probably doing another defensive prospect. Maybe we'll dive into the other cornerback, possibly Patrick Surtain. But in this video, we're going to jump into Caleb Farley, a guy that's been quickly moving up draft charts, and we're going to talk a lot more about him throughout this video. Before we jump into the film, before we jump into it, I just want to preface it by saying we didn't have near as much film on him as some of the other prospects that we've done in the past, probably for the simple reason that he didn't play all of last year, so the film is limited. But we did our best to give you guys as much as we can. But Alex, what's going on, man? Thanks for popping on.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. I'm always happy to join the Entertainah's channel and get some action going. Caleb Farley is an awesome prospect, guys. We're going to check him out. Him and Patrick Surtain are the two major corners in the first round that teams are going to be looking at. The Giants could say, let's go for that CB2. Let's get our guy. And Surtain is a great prospect. Farley offers just unlimited upside, as Anthony will likely tell you throughout the video, as he's a big fan. But as always, I'm so excited to be on the channel and just, partake in this awesome collab that we do weekly.
Absolutely, man. Anthony, what's going on? How you been, my man?
I'm doing good. I'm finally over this head cold. I'm excited to dive into Caleb Farley because I am kind of a fan of his. Alex and I have had this debate off camera multiple times about high ceiling or high floor, right? And when you look at the two cornerbacks that are going to go in the first round of this year's draft, Patrick Surtain and Caleb Farley. Hope I said his name right. We were just
I think it's Surtain. I've heard people say Surtain. People have told me it's Surtain. I think it's Surtain.
Yeah, when you look at the two prospects, Patrick Surtain, high floor, Caleb Farley, high ceiling, also a very low floor, right? So that's where it gets, that's where you can have a really strong debate about those two prospects. For me, I go for the high ceiling. I'm sure Alex and I and, Chris as well, we're going to debate this throughout the video. But for me, Caleb Farley is such an enticing prospect because he's just rare. He's a rare athlete, 6'2", 207 pounds, but runs a 4.3 40-yard dash most likely. And that's just so enticing to me, so exciting, and it shows up on the film. The speed is there. The makeup speed is there. And, with that kind of a ceiling, you're really talking about potentially getting, if you can mold him right and you can coach him right, you're talking about maybe getting the best cornerback in football.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that first. And we're going to talk a lot about him because, like I said, it's limited film. So we're going to give you some film. But I wanted to talk about that exactly because, I brought up Greg Rousseau in a video. There's rumors that have come out that the Giants are potentially interested in him. Who was it? The biggest mock guy. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he mocked the Giants to take Greg Rousseau. And he based off of upside. And a lot of Giants fans said that, well, with Patrick Graham, a great coach, he may be able to get the most out of a prospect that has more upside, and maybe the New York Giants will look to draft that way. But by the other side of the token, you could say a lot of what Joe Judge has done since he's been the head coach for the New York Giants, if they were thinking going corner here, is familiarity. Guys that either he has coached in the past, guys that coaches on his team have coached in the past. And you look at Xavier McKinney, he's played with Patrick Surtain. He's got ties to Nick Saban. And you would think, being that we felt that McKinney was such a good fit who came from the Alabama scheme, they may feel that Patrick Surtain is an ideal fit for the New York Giants. So there's a lot of questions that the New York Giants may analyze with this. But we'll start with Alex. Right now, who do you think would be the guy that would be the guy that you would choose, or maybe the guy that the Giants would choose that would be the better fit for their defense?
Well, right off the bat, I would say the Giants probably want a guy who's going to come in and produce immediately and is already efficient, has played in a pro-style defense, which is Patrick Surtain. Coming from Alabama, he has ties with Joe Judge, had ties with Burton Burns. A lot of these coaches already on the coaching staff and players like Xavier McKinney can probably vouch for him. So I think if they're going to go with anyone, at least a cornerback in the first round, it's going to be Patrick Surtain. I also like him as the better prospect simply because he's more refined. He plays in that pro-style defense, and he's versatile, being able to play inside and out. He's a little bit more conservative with the way he plays. He's not as aggressive as Caleb Farley. He's one of the – and what I will say about Farley is he's one of the best guys on the ball in cornerback in college. Like, he is unbelievable at the point of attack. He creates turnovers, and he's an alpha dog. He's alpha in the secondary. You want him back there. The problem is he's not very versatile with the way he plays. He's specifically played on the left side of the line, really on the outside hash. He kind of stays there. Like, that is his spot, which makes sense because he would actually play opposite James Bradbury, so it would kind of fit there in that scenario. But really, the main question is he dependable? Because you mentioned before, there's not a lot of film on him, and the reason is he missed all of last year because he didn't play, And he's been injured a lot the past couple seasons. He had a non-contact ACL tear in 2017. So, this is a guy who has had injuries. It could happen again. These things do pop back up. And at the NFL level, more physical, you're expected to do more. And, that could be a problem for him. But again, nobody knows. It's impossible to tell if someone will get injured. But he does have elite speed. Like Anthony mentioned, he does have 4.2, 4.3 speed. And for a cornerback, that is unheard of. You don't find guys like that. You're going to see it in the film. His makeup speed is some of the best I've ever seen. There's guys running 5 yards like in front of him, and he catches up to them, and then he'll pick a ball off. Like, that's how amazing he is when quarterbacks are throwing go routes. He will catch up and then intercept balls because they don't understand how fast he really is. So that's really what makes him such a special prospect. And he does have great size at 6'2", and his reach. When guys are running comeback routes, he breaks on it really fast. So he's a prospect that could end up being a very good cornerback. The only reason I go Surtain is because of the familiarity with the Giants between Alabama and the Giants, and then just him being a more refined prospect right out of the gate, someone you could depend on, doesn't have that injury history, and really knows how to play in a pro-style defense. And his conservative style is a little bit better for the Giants, just in terms of playing more zone coverage. He can play man-to-man, and he has tons of room to grow. I think his ceiling is maybe a little bit lower than Caleb Farley's, but his floor is exponentially higher. I'd rather go with the guy that's not a boom or bust at 11 overall. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think that's what the debate is here. Are you swinging for the fences, or are you taking the more safer pick? And I would think a lot of Giants fans, first off, probably wouldn't want to go a corner based off the success rate that the New York Giants have had with first-round corners in the past. Prince Amukamara wasn't really worth where we took him. Probably Eli Apple definitely wasn't worth where we took him. DeAndre Baker, you go down the list, and I think Giants fans are hesitant to take corners because of that. But I'm a guy that frequently says that in the defense that we're running, I think you need very strong corner play. And it's why if the New York Giants were, and I think we are all in general agreement that we really want to get weapons for Daniel Jones, but if they were going to go defense with 11, which is entirely possible, I think they're going to think long and hard about potentially taking a corner, because you look on the other side of the ball, opposite James Bradbury, like you were saying. I mean, we got guys that we hope could be something, Julian Love, but we don't know. These guys are elite cornerback prospects. It's why they're being mocked in the top 10 in these drafts. But Anthony, I want to get your thoughts between the two prospects about whether, who you think may be a better fit for the New York Giants between Surtain and Farley.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Alex makes a really compelling argument. I see both sides of the argument, arguments for both prospects. And Alex, when you brought up the familiarity, that was an excellent point, because really when you look at what Joe Judge and the Giants have done since Joe Judge has gotten here, he has been the high floor guy. They haven't necessarily gone for the high ceiling every single time. I think that Andrew Thomas, the Georgia offensive tackle, that selection was very much the high floor. If you were going Tristan Wirfs, I feel like that was very much the high ceiling, right? So maybe there is a trend here. Maybe the familiarity and the high floor is really the way that Joe Judge likes to construct the team. And then you would be looking at Patrick Surtain, and you would say he has the higher floor and he has the familiarity, and he could step in instantly and be productive. When I was talking, before we started recording with Chris about Caleb Farley, what I was saying is he is very much a project, and a lot of the prospects in the first round of the draft defensively are projects. Gregory Rousseau is a project to me. Kwity Paye to me is also a project, and Caleb Farley is also a project. But the thing with Caleb Farley is when you talk about him being a project, you talk about him potentially, if you're able to mold him and coach him correctly, being one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. I don't know if I see that ceiling with Patrick Surtain. Patrick Surtain's very good. I actually do think he's a pretty aggressive cornerback. I think the Alabama defense in general is very aggressive. When I was watching the Patrick Surtain film, I saw him get a little too over aggressive sometimes, and bite down on some routes and then get beat over top because he's very aggressive. And so is Caleb Farley. These are both very aggressive cornerbacks, which is a trait that I like in both of them. I like the aggression. I think that's a good fit for what the Giants like to do. Very aggressive defense that Patrick Graham has been running. And I think that both of them would fit in their own right. But in terms of the fit in Patrick Graham's scheme, for me, yes, Caleb Farley is CB1. In my opinion, he is the better prospect because I really look at the physical traits and I look at the ceiling, and he's the guy that I put ahead of Patrick Surtain. But when I look at the Giants and who might fit them better, it's probably hard to argue Caleb Farley's a better fit, okay? Because Chris, you mentioned this before we started recording, Xavier McKinney being the selection in the second round for the Giants last year, very much that Alabama defense, continuing with the familiarity trend and continuing with plugging into this scheme. Xavier McKinney was a perfect fit for the scheme. So that would mean, wouldn't Patrick Surtain be a perfect fit for the scheme if the scheme is so similar that there's so much carryover that Xavier McKinney is a perfect fit? Probably. There's a lot to be said to that. But again, when I look at Caleb Farley, I look at cornerbacks in the NFL. I don't see many corners who are 6'2" and run 4.3 speed. Not because, it's just impossible to do that. Like that is so rare. And when you look at the tall cornerbacks in the NFL, for the most part,
Which
right?
both of these guys are, by the way.
Right. Both of them are tall. Both of them have a lot of height and size. But when you look at those tall cornerbacks, for the most part, they're usually zone coverage cornerbacks. When you look at Seattle, when they were building that Legion of Boom, all of their cornerbacks were like 6'2" and up. You had Richard Sherman. I can't remember the other guy's name. Two B's. Brandon Browner. Is that it? Does that sound familiar?
That secondary included Thomas. It had
at safety, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor at safety. They had another corner opposite of Richard Sherman who was also like 6'3", and he was pretty good as well. But all of these guys, the point I'm trying to make, were zone coverage cornerbacks. Those tall corners usually sit in their zones and play very aggressive in their zones. What's different about Caleb Farley, but also the same, in college he played a lot of zone. He was a zone coverage cornerback. But when he played man coverage, he showed a lot of really nice traits because of that speed. So now they're saying he projects as a man coverage corner in the NFL. Well, to see a 6'2" cornerback project as a man coverage corner in the NFL with that type of speed is very rare. And we don't really see that often. The last time we saw that was a number 4 overall pick, right? Jalen Ramsey in 2016, I want to say, whenever he was drafted. That's the last time we've seen that. And he turned out to be the best cornerback in the NFL. So I'm not making a player comparison and saying that he is like.
But you're saying he's got that upside.
I'm saying that's the upside. When you have a guy with that height and speed and man coverage ability, the upside is there to be the best cornerback in the NFL.
Yeah, and then one last question before we start. Had he played this year, obviously he sat out, much like Jamar Chase, for example. Had he played this year, do you think it's not even a debate as to who the number one cornerback prospect is? Or do you think that Surtain is still probably looked at as more or less at least on par with Farley?
That's a great question. What I will say is, based on his injury history for Farley, it's impossible to say maybe he would have suffered an injury or whatnot. Right. But I think, with a whole year of experience, another year under his belt, maybe they use him a little bit more creatively. Maybe they get him into more man coverage schemes and really get him to showcase that speed that we're talking about. I think he definitely could be. He definitely could be better than Patrick Surtain. So
it's a gamble. But it's a gamble.
It's impossible to say.
And the question you got to ask yourself, and then we're going to jump right into it because we're already 12 minutes in, is it worth it for the New York Giants in the place that we're in right now to roll the dice at number 11 overall? Because we got to hit on this pick. So, it is a good question. Let's put it that way.
I think that is a really good question. Personally, I love to shoot for the stars. I aim for the moon. That's what I like to do. But I get maybe where the Giants aren't in position to do that. Maybe this is something that a team who's more established would do, take a chance on a prospect like this. I think that he's shown enough to where he's not a huge risk. I think his floor is maybe higher than I've made it seem while I'm discussing him. His ceiling is just so high. So his floor is, automatically lower. That's kind of how that goes. But this is a guy who didn't start off playing cornerback in college. He's only played corner for 2 years and then he opted out, right? He played like a season and a half of corner in college. But as soon as he started playing it, it was a brand new position to him. He was extremely good at it immediately. And that tells you he can probably make that transition pretty easily with good coaching and instantly become a good man coverage corner. I really do believe that. So, yeah, I don't know. Are the Giants in position to make this pick? That's a really good debate. We're probably all in agreement that we want them to go offense anyway, but we'll see what happens at free agency. If somehow Galladay falls in our lap, might change our plans. Maybe we do go corner. Maybe we do go edge rusher. But do we want a project? Do we want a certain thing? That's really interesting debate to have.
It really is. And I want to pull it up now, and I tried to do it as you were talking. For some reason, it's taking forever to load. So we'll see if it loads, but I could probably edit this out anyway, but I'm still waiting for it to give me the option to share. I don't know how to quicken this up, but so it usually takes me a little while, but come on, let's go.
Well, in the meantime, while you're figuring that out, I'll just give my 2 cents on what Anthony said. Yeah. So, basically when it comes to Farley, like you said, the draft boards have him flip-flopping, back and forth between Patrick Surtain and Caleb Farley being better or worse. And I think, Farley, what I'm scared about is he doesn't have the experience against quality receivers in the NFL, they're going to be able to take advantage of his weaknesses. That's kind of my biggest concern is that will be present. Like, he hasn't had a ton of experience at CB against elite prospects, against elite corners, or against elite wide receivers in the NFL. They're going to be able to look at him and say, all right, you're a speed guy. We're going to just bully you. We're just going to put bigger receivers against you, match you up against guys, that might be stronger. So that's something that I might be a little bit concerned about.
So I get that, but on counterpoint, he locked down Chase Claypool when they played in 2019. So that's my counterpoint to that.
I mean, one good performance isn't screaming to me elite prospect, though. You know what I mean?
Well, it's not just one elite performance. I'm just saying you mentioned the case where he might go up against a big guy, and I gave you one example where he shut him down. That's it.
Let's jump into the film. I finally got it to work. So you got Caleb Farley here lined up, and most of these clips, from what I noticed, are against Miami for the most part. But like we said, it's hard to get a ton of game film on him. Here's the first one. You're going to see him lined up here on the right side. Looks like this is man coverage here, right?
Yeah, I think so. Looks like it's a little off ball.
So let's take a look. Hell of a play there. I mean, he's got no help here. He's one-on-one at about the 10-yard line. Let's take another look. Presses him up there and makes a great play on the ball. Did he pick? No, it looks like he just broke up the pass. But regardless,
I think he intercepted that. It looks like he did.
Okay, maybe he did. But either way, great play.
Well, I love the physicality here. He's very physical at the catch point, and that's what you love to see. Very aggressive. And one thing, as Giants fans, we all remember Eli Apple could never turn his head around and never locate the football. This is a guy we're just seeing on this play can locate the football, gets his head around, locates it, attacks it, makes a play on the ball. So that's super impressive. I think you're right. I think it did go incomplete. I don't think it was an interception, but still a hell of a play. Super aggressive at the catch point, and that's what I love to see.
Yeah. The other thing before Alex talks that I notice here is, like you said, the physicality part. But it's almost like basketball. He's boxing him out. Like, he's not allowing him to get to the inside part of that route, and he undercuts it, and he's able to break up the pass.
Yeah, I mean, like Anthony said, the ability to turn the ball, his head around to see the ball is what I really like there. And he knows that's kind of just like a fade to the end zone, kind of a jump ball 50-50. But you're not going to win those 50-50 balls against him because he has that 6'2" height. But like I mentioned earlier, he's a ball hawk. Like, he gets his head around, he makes plays on the ball. That's what's so enticing about him, because he's a former receiver. So keep that in mind. Like, he is capable of going up, high pointing balls and making catches as a receiver, which only adds to him. Like, we saw Julian Love in the week 17, he dropped like 2 interceptions. When you have a guy like Caleb Farley who's played receiver and, he knows how to catch the football like properly, when he turns that head around, he can make plays on the ball and turn the ball over and create opportunities for your offense, which is what makes him an even more enticing prospect.
Yeah. Here's another play with him lined up on the left side. He's a little bit, further up the
line. You can lower that. I think if you drag that portion, you can the little play thing.
Oh, okay. My mistake. I'm not great at this. So here he is here. He's lined up in, I guess it's more zone coverage here, and he's dropping off the ball. What I noticed on this clip is you really see, like you were saying earlier, Alex, you really see the closing speed on this curl play. But let's take a look. Because he's what, 5 yards off here, and now you're starting to see him close and watch the closing speed and him break up this ball, break up the play. So that's the quickness that we were talking about earlier. That's what you see there on that play.
Yeah, the closeout speed is really impressive, and that's one of those traits that you look at that you say you can definitely mold this guy into an NFL cornerback, and a very good one at that, right? When you see a guy break on the ball like this, that's a trait that you love to see. This will have scouts marveling at this prospect, right? Because he almost breaks on this route so badly that he almost overruns it, right? He's on the back, like the outside back of the wide receiver at this point. He breaks on this so fast. And you mentioned it. He's got probably 3-4 yards of separation right here. But as soon as he sees the wide receiver start to break back, he just goes. And he's super aggressive again at the catch point. He breaks it up. And that closeout speed is just really impressive. And that's what you get with a guy who runs like a 4.3 40, right? He's just got that quick twitch ability, and it's really impressive to see at that height especially.
Yeah, you look at the quarterback. Ball's out here. Okay, and watch it. Look at the break there. Ball's out right there, and look at him. Look at that quick closing speed. That's something you can't teach.
Yeah, what I also like is he also goes for the football. He punches that ball out. He uses his hands properly and disrupting at the catch point, which is something that it takes time for cornerbacks to learn that fundamentalistic kind of idea. And he's, Anthony mentioned he hasn't been playing corner for that long. So the fact that he's able to do that and realize, what's the most important part of a receiver's catch process? Is it when he catches it and when he brings it into his chest? But he manages to get his hands in there and he makes plays because of his speed really makes up for a lot of weaknesses for a lot of players, that it makes them a lot better. And like Anthony keeps saying, when you have a player that can run 4.2, 4.3 speed at cornerback, you don't find players like that very often. Like it's extremely rare, especially one that has wide receiver traits. It can make plays on the ball like a ball hawk. That's why his ceiling is so high. If he stays healthy and he develops properly, we're talking about a guy that can be one of the best corners in football, as long as he doesn't get, just doesn't get injured and doesn't miss time and just misses developmental stages.
Yeah, and I quickly want to touch on what you said. You mentioned that he hasn't played the position for long, and that just shows on a play like this, natural instincts. And what you want is natural instincts out of a cornerback, because that's how you can get good coaching and mold them together. You take those natural instincts, you combine it with refined technique, and that's how you create a really good cornerback in the NFL.
Here's the next clip. And the first thing that I see in this clip before I even play it, look how much bigger he is than the wide receiver he's going up against. He just looks a lot bigger going up against Miami here. Look how tall you don't, like you were saying earlier, and it looks like he got beat here, but like you were saying earlier, you don't see corners this big that run the way that he can. It's just rare, but he gets beat here, it looks like, on a double move.
Yeah, I think the problem here is he doesn't really play out of the slot very often, and he usually is squeezed to the boundary. So those go routes, he knows where they're going, or it's a comeback and he can break on it. He's playing in the slot here, and it leaves a lot of space on the sideline for this slot receiver to exploit him. So he gives him a nice little release at the break point there, and he has his body turned. And Farley has quick hips. He flips his hips really, really fast. The problem is this receiver is also just pretty quickly, and this ball is already out. Like there's some points you're going to lose reps at some points. And he loses this one, but I think it primarily is because of his inexperience playing in the slot and not really understanding all that space on the outside. Because normally, like if you play this clip, you'll see like the ball, he's going to throw this in a second, like right here. Usually he's already squeezed to the sideline, so he doesn't have all that space to run. He can squeeze him quickly, but since there's like 10 yards of space there, the receiver just keeps going laterally. And he just beats him that way. I think he just not experienced enough playing in the slot to really win this rep.
Yeah, I'm actually going to commend you, Alex. I think that's really good analysis of this play in specific, because he very much is a strict boundary cornerback. So when you talk about him having such a high ceiling, that's not without limitations. Okay, he does have some limitations. He's not a guy that's going to go into the slot and start traveling around and playing sticky man coverage across the middle of the field. He's very much a boundary cornerback, and that's why when we talk about him being in that zone defense at Virginia Tech, we talk about him sitting on the boundary, kind of like Richard Sherman, like I was mentioning earlier, and just protecting one side of the field. That's very much what he did. He did play some good man coverage, not a lot of press coverage, but he did play a lot of good man coverage from the boundary. But when they're going over the middle of the field like that, I do have worries, because he's very used to having that boundary as his friend. It's very much his friend, that that outside boundary, and he very much takes advantage of that when he's playing that outside cornerback position, especially sitting in those zone coverages. So that's really good analysis, Alex. I do worry about him traveling with a wide receiver in man coverage. I don't know how exactly he's going to handle that, because I really do think that just keeping him on one side of the field and having him play either man or zone just on that one side, that's the key to getting the most out of Caleb Farley, because his skill set is a little limited in terms of his experience with traveling with wide receivers into the slot or across the middle of the field in man coverage.
The one thing I'll say about the traveling thing and why it wouldn't concern me too much before we get to the next clip, Giants didn't do that last year. Bradbury never traveled. People used to talk about that. Why didn't Bradbury travel with the number one corner? I think the Giants, they're smart enough. I think Patrick Graham's smart enough to know that that's not his strength. That's not why he's on the team. I think they'd stick him on one side of the field. I honestly don't think he would travel.
Yeah, to add to that, I think what the Giants did with Bradbury last year is they basically said, okay, James, take away an entire half of the field, and then this other half of the field, we're going to allocate more resources to helping Isaac Yiadom, Ryan Lewis, Corey Ballantyne with safeties in zone coverage and dropping guys and linebackers dropping into those zones. So I think, James Bradbury, they were like, don't worry about following the number one guy. Just take away a side of the field and we'll worry about the other side. So I think that was kind of their way of fixing some weaknesses and trying to at least disguise them.
Yeah, and that's really a perfect analysis again, because when they had James Bradbury taking away one side of the field, we talk a lot about how the Giants actually surprisingly played a lot of zone coverage last season. So when we talk about Caleb Farley being a really good boundary cornerback in a zone scheme, maybe we're talking about him being a great fit for the Giants defense and what they're trying to do. Because if you're talking about James Bradbury sitting on one side of the field and taking it away, and then you're talking about Caleb Farley potentially doing the same thing on the other side of the field, well, then it's just up to your slot corner and your linebackers to cover the middle, because you can potentially have such good corners on the outside that you really take away both boundaries. And then it just becomes a game of attacking the middle of the field for the Giants. And so that's a really good, analysis of it again, Alex, and you too as well, Chris. So yeah,
I appreciate
you're
it.
welcome.
Thank you for thanking me. But the other thing, the thing that I keep saying, we're going to play the next clip here. I think he's right here on the bottom right corner here. That I think if you bring in a corner like this, if we were to draft him or Surtain, whoever, I think it's going to allow the defense also to be much more aggressive in terms of blitzing, something that I think we expected more last year. And here's another play where it is a great play, by the way. I remember the play. But again, I guess you guys found the couple of clips because, like you said, PFF didn't say he played a lot of man, but he's man here. He's one-on-one on an island, and you see it all here. Like you said, the quick changing of the hips there, shifting of the hips, and then how he doesn't give him an inch the whole way down the field. Great closing speed. And then he just makes a fantastic play on the ball. I think you're going to see a close, a better angle here to really see how he almost comes at this like a wide receiver. That's just a phenomenal play.
Yeah, I mean, this play is probably my favorite of his because from the get-go, he doesn't play a lot of jam coverage. He's not going to jam receivers very often, but when he's playing kind of on ball, what he does here is really nice because not only is he step for step, but he's fighting his hands. The receiver's trying to bat his hands away. You can see it throughout the route. He's trying to fight with his hands, push him away. But Caleb Farley stays glued to his hip, like absolutely glued to his hip. And all the while having the awareness to turn his head because he knows where he is on the field. He knows he's close to the end zone here. So this ball is probably arriving within a second, and he turns his head. He's already looking. He's like, I'm going to make a play on this ball. I'm a receiver. I'm going to go up and get this. And he has the height for it. He has the ball skills. He gets positioning. He gets the inside leverage. The quarterback probably should have threw this to the outside a little bit more, but I think this is why you don't throw go routes against Caleb Farley, though. This is why you don't do that because he gets inside leverage. He doesn't let that wide receiver stack over top of him, which is probably what Anthony will say. He really fights those hands and stays glued to his hip, doesn't let him get over top, and then he just boxes him out, like Chris said, basketball size. Just boxes him out and gets an interception, like a ball hawk alpha male in coverage.
Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned the stack thing because this is very much one of those cases where that receiver could not get over the top of Caleb Farley. He could not get back on that original line and really take this into, being a burning go route. And one thing that you see here is just so much speed, right? To where the point where the quarterback really just doesn't expect it, I don't think. I don't think he expects Caleb Farley to just stick with this wide receiver and just glue to his hip like that. And then, you mentioned the ball locating, right? He locates the football so well here. I mentioned it earlier with Eli Apple. He could not locate the football. And I'm mentioning it again. Caleb Farley really knows how to locate the football. He looks back, he finds it, he turns, he makes a play on it, and he really boxed out the wide receiver there like a basketball move, and his frame is so large you can't go over the top of it. He just takes up so much space in the catch radius for the wide receiver. It makes it so difficult, when you're throwing up a ball that maybe, it wasn't supposed to be 50-50, but he turned it into a 50-50, right, with great coverage. So now it's a 50-50 ball, but because he's got such a huge frame and so much size to him, it's really difficult for a wide receiver to actually work over the top of Caleb Farley. You really just can't do it because he's got such ball locating skills and he's got that big frame to box you out with. He's going to make the plays on the ball. And I think, when you talk about a defensive playmaker, Caleb Farley truly can be a defensive playmaker.
Yeah, I mean, this play, and before we get to the next one, this is as good as it gets. I mean, he's got, like we said earlier, he's got no help, and he just stays stride for stride with him. And you see everything. You see everything that he could bring to the table here, not just his coverage skills, but, like you said, his playmaking skills on that play as well. Here's another good play here. I think this was the clip that actually we showed a couple of times before we revised it. He's going to have a great pass breakup here over the middle of the field against Miami. Again, no separation at all. He's on top of him the whole time, and he almost comes up with another pick. But just great awareness. You see him turn the head, look for the ball, and makes a play on the ball. Just a great play. Stays stride for stride, no separation, and he's all over him. It's just a great play.
Quickly, I want to jump in here, Alex. I will say one thing, though, about the technique on this play. It's actually not the best. So if you rewind this, when the receiver makes this break, Caleb Farley uses a speed recovery here, right? He kind of just does a 360. You see he flips and he turns all the way around. You shouldn't do that. You can do that if you're Caleb Farley because he's so damn fast, but that's not the proper technique. So that's why when we're saying he's a project, you need to mold him into a better corner. Something like this where he turns completely away from the wide receiver like that and then locates him again and recovers, because he was beat on this play. When he did that, it signaled to the quarterback, this guy's beat. That's why it was thrown. But then we talk about that elite makeup speed and those things that you just cannot teach. And that's what you see on this play as well. So you see both sides of the coin on this play, right? This play is perfect for analyzing Caleb Farley because you see maybe the technical flaws in his man coverage from inexperience, but then you just see like this elite athleticism that makes up for all of the mistakes that he makes in his technicality.
Yeah, Anthony. I mean, that's great what you said, because I was going to say the same thing. The most important, most impressive part of this is when he turns his back to the receiver, which is like a cardinal sin. You never want to do that because the second you turn your back, you have no idea. The wide receiver can easily cross his back and head towards the out route. You know, that's the problem with doing that kind of thing. But the fact that he's able to turn his back and then flip his hips and recover speed and actually almost intercept that ball is what makes him so attractive. You know, like he's a little bit unorthodox with the way he plays, the way his fundamentals go. And that kind of is like that was a little bit of a bad rep for him. But when you have elite athleticism and traits like that, you can recover and it makes up for it. So, you know, a lot of corners, a lot of players in the NFL don't have that elite athleticism that when they're beat fundamentally, they can't recover. But he does. And that's what makes him so exciting, because even when he's beat, he can still make a play on the ball. And, you know, that is, you know, why he's rated so highly.
Right, because I'll say, for example, here, when the wide receiver goes to the post, right, and Caleb Farley does that whole 360 thing, the speed recovery, and gets back on it. Now, let's just imagine this wide receiver ran a post corner. So he breaks for the post and then goes to the corner. Well, Caleb Farley's completely toasted, and you're probably talking about 10 yards of separation. So that's why that technical thing that he did is such a wrong thing to do there, you know, because it's a gamble. You're really gambling in that when you do a speed recovery like that. So, but the thing is, though, Caleb Farley can gamble on himself because he just has those elite traits, man. That makeup speed cannot be taught. It is insane. So when I was saying that 4.3 speed shows up on film, I'm talking about a play like this. And this is a play. This is by far my favorite play we've analyzed so far, because it's actually so layered when you talk about the technique and the physical abilities. This is like my favorite play to dissect from Caleb Farley, and shows why I love him so much as a prospect, because he's not perfect. He's flawed. He has a lot of room to grow and a lot to coach out and fix, but he just has those things that you cannot teach, and they make such a difference on the football field.
Now, the question I have, and I completely see after you broke it down what he brings to the table in a play like this, in the NFL, though, you don't correct that, less likely you're going to get away with that mistake.
Well, that's exactly right, because let's say that's Tyreek Hill. He's that speed recovery, you know, Caleb Farley has a speed, but Tyreek Hill presumably has a little bit more speed, right? So he might not be able to get right back on the receiver's hip like that. And then, like I mentioned, you know, a lot of the times when we broke down the Seattle Seahawks, the Giants versus the Seattle Seahawks, we were breaking down the defense, and we were doing it with Brian Walker, the defensive backs coach who trains with Jabril Peppers and Darnay Holmes. One thing that he was saying is, in that Seattle offense, when they go out to run their routes, they have two routes. They can run one or they can run another based on what Russell Wilson sees or what they see in the coverage.
Just going to make that point.
Right. Yeah. In the NFL, when I was saying that could have been a post corner, that very much could have been an option route in the NFL, where the receiver has the ability to do the post, but once he sees Caleb Farley do that speed recovery, completely turn around, just takes it to the corner. And Russell Wilson, let's say it's Tyler Lockett running this route, he's got the obviously has the awareness and the IQ to turn it to the corner, and Russell Wilson is going to hit him, and it's going to be a huge gain.
Yeah.
Go
ahead. Go ahead.
Just quickly, in addition to that, NFL teams are going to see that mistake on film, and they're going to use that the next week. You know what I mean? This is something that you will not see happen again. They will run outside release go route into a post across the middle, but instead they'll sell that because the wide receivers are going to be exponentially better, and they're just going to whip that to the outside on an outside out route, and they're going to get toasted. Or they're just going to use a double move of sorts and try to turn them around and exploit that bad fundamental in his game. And teams will exploit those weaknesses. That's what they do. That is why they are so good. That's where the good NFL teams will make Caleb Farley pay for that. So that's one thing to see. There's a lot of things you got to coach out of him. But in other instances, he might be able to recover based on his speed alone.
Yep. And I agree. And it's not even just the film aspect, which is a great point. It's also just in the moment. Kind of like Anthony was saying, you're going to be going up against professional athletes, guys that you're going to have more complex offenses in the NFL, and guys that are able to, in the moment, recognize that he just made this mistake and take advantage of it by running the secondary option. And you're going to have better quarterbacks that are going to pick up on it. But the thing I could say to this to combat that is you're also going to have much better coaching at the pro level. You're going to have more, he's going to gain more experience. A guy like Patrick Graham, you would think, would be able to coach him up and get him to correct these flaws in his game.
That's exactly right. And that's why when I'm saying he's a project, you mold him. That's where you see the high ceiling. You get the proper coaching around him. We see the traits. They're there on a play like this. We see the flaws and the traits on a play like this. Proper coaching, you mold him. He doesn't make that mistake at the next level maybe as much. That's really where you talk about the coaching and molding him into that guy who can be a top 3 cornerback in the NFL based on his traits.
Here's the next clip. He's playing, about 7 yards off the line. Let's see what happens here. Again, close it. I mean, they didn't get this as much separation this time as the last time they were in the curl route, but just great coverage. I mean, he stays lockstep, turns the hips, follows the receiver. Eyes aren't even on the quarterback yet, and just closes out and breaks up the pass. Much like I think it was the second play that we showed, only this time the receiver doesn't create as much separation on the curl, so it doesn't really, show as much of the closing speed, but again, great coverage.
Yeah, I mean, when you see Caleb Farley have that couple of feet of cushion, he knows that if the guy just goes route down the field, he will step for step. He'll squeeze him to the sideline. He'll go step for step with him. But that little cushion right there, he knows how fast he is, and he's able to break on that so easily. It's like you're not going to beat Caleb Farley on straight up go routes and comeback routes. It'll never happen unless you have a monster receiver like DK Metcalf who's just going to box him out. And even then, you never know. Caleb Farley can get his hand in there. I just think he shows really good fundamentals here. His speed is unparalleled, and it really gives him that cushion, that safety net in case he does get hit on a double move, or he does get hit on a stutter step and go, or if it's a comeback route like this. And, he just does a great job recovering and getting into position right on the hip. The ball's not there yet. It's about to get there, and he's right on that hip. Like, he is in that play. He's not a yard away. He's not recovering. He is there already. So by the time, and that's the thing about his speed, is that by the time a quarterback throws the ball, he might think he has separation, but by the time the ball gets there, it's already closed down. He might be going for an interception. Like, that could be a pick six in another scenario. So that is what quarterbacks have to be worried about. They might look like separation right there, but it's really not.
Yeah, this play, I love this play. This is so exciting to watch. This is an NFL level play from this cornerback, okay? When you see at the top of this route, right about here, the burst that he gets it, when the wide receiver breaks, and then Caleb Farley breaks on the ball, just the burst, the acceleration that he has coming out of his break is, you can't teach it. These are the things that you cannot teach, but this is also a technically sound play. This is this is a great play from a cornerback in general. Plus, the speed helps. That's how he's able to break so quickly. But this is perfect technique. You could see him watching the wide receiver's hips, watching the waist, seeing what he's going to do and where he's going. You can see it in Caleb Farley's eyes where his head is turning, and the back pedal is smooth. He gets there. Once the receiver starts to break outside, he starts to break with him, stops with him, goes on the route. It's just a perfect cornerback play.
Perfect
And
rep.
exactly, picture perfect rep. I love to see this, and really, I'm just such a fan of Caleb Farley. He's one of my favorite prospects in this draft. He's so exciting to me.
Yeah, that's as good as it gets. Let's take a look at the next one here. I think he's in the same area on the outside.
I think this is the same clip. Just
Yes,
again.
it is.
Yeah.
It is the same clip. Yep. Yeah,
If this is the last one.
Yeah, this is the last one here. Where is he on this one? Is it the far right?
He's on the bottom. He's running. There's just a little slant. I just wanted to show.
Bottom left. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, he gets the left hand in there and breaks it up.
Yeah, that's that
really
reach.
Nice play. Because he's beat.
Mm-hmm.
He's beat. Maybe a little bit better throw in front of him. He doesn't have the ability to break this up. But regardless, this is a quick slant pattern. You see the quick reflexes there. But he's beat, and he gets his left hand in there. Makes a great play.
And I like the aggression, too. You know, he could easily have not tried to make a play on this and let him catch that and then just try and tackle him. But instead, he dives for it. He gets that leverage inside. He feels confident he's going to make a play, and he does. And that's kind of the aggressive nature he has with that speed and athleticism. He feels like he can make plays like this. And, like I said earlier before, he knows when that ball's going to be there. He's an ex-receiver. Like, he knows when the ball is supposed to be there. He knows where it should be located. And he gets his hands in the right places to make a play. So that's kind of, just an additional aspect of what he brings to the table.
Yeah, and again, we're talking about that closeout speed, that makeup speed. And another thing I'll point out here, we've been talking about that size and that length. It shows up on the film. We see that here, right? If he's 3 inches shorter, he's not breaking this up. There's no way he's got the arm length. This is purely the things you cannot teach, just continuing to show up on the film. So the things that you can teach, you can really mold him all together to be one of the best corners in the NFL. I really do see that type of a ceiling with him because we talk about the things you can't teach. They're so phenomenal for him. And then we talk about the things you can teach. And you can teach him to be really just an excellent prospect or excellent NFL player.
He's special. I mean, in terms of his upside, he's definitely special. You definitely see it. And if the Giants are swinging for the fences, maybe Farley is their guy. We'll see what happens. I still think they're leaning offense, but I'm a corner guy if we're going defense. And
we got to see what they do in free agency, right?
Got to see what they do in free agency. But I'm going to be honest. I'm kind of leaning with Anthony here that if it was me and both guys were there, which more than likely they wouldn't be. Like, you look at the teams in front of us, Dallas could very well take a corner. Denver could very well take a corner. They just cut one. But if it was me, I think I'd go with the guy with the higher upside. But I definitely could see the other side of the argument with Surtain having a lot more familiarity, and he's nothing to sneeze at either, as you're going to see when we jump into his film in a little bit. But, yeah, man, I had a fun time breaking it down with you guys, man. I want to say thank you to both you guys for coming on. Looking forward to jumping on your channels next week. We'll figure out whichever prospect we're going to do, but make sure you go into that link in the description, subscribe. You won't want to miss it. Alex, going to let you get some closing words, and then Anthony, I'll let you close it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as always, so much fun to come and break down some film. I love doing this with the prospects because we really get an idea of what the Giants are looking at and what might be a good scheme fit for them. Caleb Farley really is a super intriguing prospect. The speed, unparalleled. The ball skills, unparalleled. You don't find this in cornerbacks very often. The only reason I like Patrick Surtain just a bit more is because if they put him in the defense year one, he's going to perform. He's going to be a good right away. He's going to be a good player for you. Caleb Farley might need a year of development. He might need a year to really get his grounds in the NFL, get that good coaching, and then the next year I think he'll take a massive step forward. That's kind of how I see him developing in the NFL. But the Giants have the time. They're not going to be a Super Bowl contending team this year. So going into the third year of James Bradbury's contract, if they don't extend him, they have a number 2 corner who's going to be very good next to him. And that really gives them the availability to spend draft capital on a pass rusher or use free agency money on an outside linebacker, whoever it might be. So I like Caleb Farley. I would not be mad at drafting Caleb Farley. I still think we need offensive weapons. But that CB2 position, man, like if you solve that, Patrick Graham, he gets creative. He really goes back to his roots, playing more man coverage, sending more blitzers, throwing quarterbacks off their game, and really tantalizing the trenches. That's kind of what I like about Graham's style. He just couldn't do it so much because he had to drop so many guys into zone coverage last year to mask the CB2 deficiencies. So Caleb Farley, awesome prospect, one of the best ball skill corners I've seen in a while. And I think, he would be a phenomenal player for the Giants, as well as Surtain. Either way, you can't really go wrong with those two in the first round.
what I like about where we're picking, man, Anthony, is because there at 11 there are so many good options for the New York Giants, and I'm not going to be upset, really, no matter who they take, unless they take somebody ridiculous. But whether it's a wide receiver, whether it's a corner, whether it's a tackle like Rashawn Slater, if he were to fall, there are so many guys that could really help out this roster at number 11. But if we're going defense, I want a corner. Anthony, go ahead, my man.
Yeah, I totally agree. Number 11 is a really good place to be picking. And one thing that I will say, sort of a counterpoint to Alex's closing statement, it's not really though, but you mentioned, Patrick Graham maybe trying to get back to his roots of running more of a man coverage system. Well, the way that I see it, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. If this zone, disguised zone, heavy blitz, pass rushing scheme is working, Giants should stick with it. And that's where I do see Caleb Farley potentially being a really good fit for the Giants defense with those zone traits that he has. I'm a huge Caleb Farley fan. I really love the upside. I see the ceiling there for him to be arguably the best cornerback in the NFL. If the Giants drafted him, I would actually be super excited about it. I am leaning offense still. I want them to take an offensive weapon, whether that be, a Waddle or Rashad Bateman even at 11. I'm a big proponent of that as well.
Let me ask you this real quick.
Okay, let's see it.
You're a big Farley guy.
I'm a big Farley. I'm a pretty big Farley guy right now, yeah.
All right, let's say the 3 wide receivers are gone.
Okay.
And it's Farley or Bateman. You would take Bateman? I'm taking Farley.
It all depends on what happens in free agency. That's the truth of it, to be honest. Because, I know they're saying that Kenny Galladay is likely to get the franchise tag, right? But say he doesn't,
Or you can
and the
take
Giants,
a trade.
if the Giants sign him, right, you can do a tag and trade. If the Giants have Kenny Galladay on the roster, Farley, 100%. If they don't, if they have Curtis Samuel, probably going Farley. If they have Corey Davis, I'm going Farley. So if they sign any wide receiver of any significance, I'm going Farley. But if they don't, I might just go Bateman because I really think that Bateman, comparison, Keenan Allen, I think that he is going to be a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. I don't think he's getting enough love just because the top 3 receivers in this class are such blue chip prospects. But I think in other draft classes, Rashad Bateman's wide receiver 1 in most years. It's just this is such a loaded receiving class.
Also, because it's from Minnesota, you're always going to be more, focused on the Alabama guys,
right?
The big name prospects.
Alabama, LSU, right? That's a good point. Yeah.
He doesn't have that elite speed. He's not a burner. He's just an elite route runner, which is why I love it. And Anthony, I love about it so much.
I love the route running.
You don't need to be a speed guy. I made the point yesterday. I was like, think about Tavon Austin. Everyone thought he was going to be unbelievable. He's purely a speed guy. Ends up not doing much at all. Bateman, you can't. Learn speed, but pure fundamentals when it comes to route running translates to the NFL.
Those are the best receivers. Are the route runners? They're
Hopkins,
not
Adams. These guys are just elites. Route runners. It makes them that's what makes them so great.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But
Caleb Farley. I'm a huge fan, but I'll just say thank you for having us on again, Chris. I love doing these every week. I'm so excited to continue to ramp them up, do as many as possible leading up to the draft. It's been a great time, and I'm happy that I kind of sold you on the Caleb Farley train.
Oh, I like Farley going in. You sold me even more. But we're gonna be pumping these out a lot as the draft gets a lot closer, as we get a better idea of what the New York Giants may be doing. Like you said, a lot of answers will be given after free agency as to what our needs may be. So I'm looking forward, once we really know where the Giants could be headed in the draft, really starting to dive into some of these deeper prospects. But guys, thank you so much for coming on. And as always, if you like what you watch, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.